Okay, awesome, people. We are recording. We are doing topics in Halacha. I believe we're class 5 right now. Class 5, topics in Halacha, Zoom edition. Okay, good. So we spoke last time a little bit about Netilat Yadayim. We're getting into Halachot over. Now we're getting into the nitty gritty. We spoke a lot about intentions. We spoke about that, but now we're actually in real Halachot. And we're doing now the Halachot of how to wash our hands. So a little recap. What did we say last week? So we spoke last week about three main reasons why we wash our hands. We wake up in the morning, we want to wash our hands. Why do we wash our hands? Approach number one, simple approach, to be clean, cleanliness. There's physical tumah. We touch places while we're sleeping at night, sweaty areas, dirty areas. We want to make our hands clean for purity, physical purity, spiritual purity, and especially, says the Rosh, before we pray. Before we pray to Hashem, we want to make sure that we're clean before we're talking to God. Now, this actually, the washing our hands applies even for Mincha and Mariv and Arbit at night. Before any prayer, before you make a bracha on food, if your hands are really dirty, they're supposed to be cleaned, so you can say Hashem's name, but you don't make a bracha. You only make a bracha of Netilat Yadayim when you wake up in the morning. Okay, that was approach number one. Then we had approach number two of the Rashba that says, why do we make a bracha of Netilat Yadayim? The rabbis put it together because there's a brand new me that's born. I'm like a brand new creation when I wake up in the morning, and it reminds us of the Kohanim, the holy priests in the temple. Before they served God, they had to wash their hands from the basin, from the kior. So too, we wash our hands from a cup. We want to be pure so we can serve God because we're like the Kohanim today. And then the last idea was the Gemara, also brought down in the Zohar, the Kabbalah, that when we go to bed at night, our soul goes up to heaven, and a bit of like death comes down into the world. When a person goes and his consciousness, is put to sleep, there's a certain level of tumah, of impurity that comes into the body. And as you wake up and the soul comes back in, the impurity gets spit out. But in the end of the day, there's a little bit of it left on our fingertips, and we have to wash our hands to get rid of that. Okay, that's what we spoke last week. And then we also did a little practice run of how do we wash our hands. So we get a little cup over here. How do we wash our hands? Straight in halacha. We pick up the cup in our right hand, fill it up with the water, pass to the left hand, pour on the right, pass to the right, pour on the left, pass to the left, pour on the right. Do that back and forth until you get to 3 on each hand. And then eventually we have ourselves 6 total, make the bracha, and we're good to go. So that's how we wash our hands in the morning. That's a recap from last week. Now, let's get a little deeper. Let's try to get a little more into the reasons behind and some of the more nuances in the halacha. But question, I think we said last week, question and review, questions, anything from last week, washing hands, we're good from last week? Okay, let's get a little bit now into a little more detail. Okay. So we said last time that we wash our hands back and forth. What we say in Hebrew is the serugin, means you go back and forth. When you wash our hands for bread, how do you wash for bread? For bread, you go like this: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Some people do 2, but for bread, we just do 2 or 3 on each hand. We don't go back and forth. By Netilat Yadayim in the morning, we go back and forth. Why do we go back and forth? So this is because of reason number 3. Because of the Kabbalists, the Kabbalists come along and they say that in order to get rid of the impure spirit, you got to go back and forth. And they actually have a cool idea, take it or leave it, those that like Kabbalah, but they say that we have ourselves like by the knuckles down, you have like 3 areas. So like the tumah like jumps back and forth until eventually it pops off all 3 areas. And that's why you have to go back and forth to be able to remove it. Okay, Kabbalistic idea, I don't fully understand it, but that would be the idea of why you're going back and forth according to the Kabbalah. Okay. Next idea. Most of the year, almost every day of the year, how far do we wash? Who can show me on their hand? How far do we wash our hands? People, hands. How far do you wash the hands?
The whole hand.
Whole hand. Excellent, excellent. Whole hand. We go up to here. We go down to the wrist, all the way down. We want to get the whole hand. Except for 2 days a year. Which 2 days?
Tish B'Av and Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur and something.
And Yom Kippur. We have 2 days a year. Yom Kippur from the Torah, the holy day from the Torah, that we have a commandment not to wash ourselves. We have a bunch of 5 different things we're not allowed to do on Yom Kippur. One of them is that we can't wash ourselves. So therefore, we don't wash our hands completely. We only wash up till here. up till here, meaning go to the top of the fingers. So not down here, not halfway there. You go all the way up here, but you wash from here down, but not higher. That's on Yom Kippur. That's also on Tisha B'Av. Even though Tisha B'Av is rabbinic, still the rabbis came along and made a decree not to wash yourself. That being said, because of the Ruach Ra'ah, because of this impure spirit, we still wash up until the knuckles, so that way we remove it and fine. Now, if somebody on those days would get really dirty, like let's say somebody's changing a diaper and then all of a sudden there's like, poop on your hands or something, then for sure you can clean it, even if it goes anywhere else. But on a regular, where it's just normal impurity, then you would go from here to there on those 2 days of the year. Okay. Did we say last week why we pick it up with the right hand? What's special about the right hand? Why do we pick it up with the right?
You're supposed to do a mitzvah with your right hand
Why?
because it's like the strong hand.
Excellent. So reason number one, it's the stronger hand. We do things with strength. We want to show God. We care about what we're doing. We have koach. We're doing it with our strength. That's reason number one. Reason number two is Kabbalah. The Kabbalah says that the right side of the world symbolizes kindness, while the left side symbolizes strict justice. We always want the kindness to win out against the strict justice. So therefore, we also, the right side symbolizes we want to do things with kindness, have an easier life, an easier way of doing things. Okay. Now, let's learn some Jewish words. Who knows what the word lechatchila means? It's a big, important halacha word. We're going to use it a lot this year. Lechatchila, if you're Sephardi, lechatchila. You know what it means? Lechatchila. Okay, how about this word? There's another word called bidi eved, bidi avad. You guys heard that word? Bidi eved, bidi avad?
Isn't that after the fact?
Good. So bidi avad, bidi eved means after the fact. Lechatchila, you have the word in there, tchila, which means beginning in Hebrew. In Aramaic, it means ideally. In halacha, we have different levels. We have a level called ideal. If I want to do a mitzvah properly, this is the way you do it to make it ideal. Then we have a level called bidi avad. I'm not in an ideal situation. I did it in a way that wasn't the best, but after the fact, it's still good. We have a level of doesn't work, invalid, asur, prohibited, doesn't work. And then we have a high level called hidur, which means like extra beautifying. Okay, beautifying is not necessary, but it makes it much nicer. On Chanukah, we like the hidur with the best kind of oils, the best kind of and the amount that we liked. But I'll give you an example. You have kiddush on a Friday night. How do you make kiddush? You take a cup, you fill it up with wine. What is lechatchila? What is the ideal way to make the bracha? You take a permanent cup, you fill it with water, and you drink it. And you fill it with wine, make the bracha, and you drink it. Bidi avad, after the fact, if you don't have a normal cup, you only have a plastic disposable cup, after the fact, bidi avad, I don't have a better cup, I could use a plastic cup. Lechatchila, I should use a permanent cup that I'm not going to throw out a second later. You get it? Bidi avad means I'm not ideal, but let me do what works even if it's not ideal. Lechatchila means ideal. Hidur will say, don't take a mug, take a silver cup for the kiddush. That's called hidur. Hidur is unnecessary, it's just called beautifying. Make sense? When we wash our hands in the morning, lechatchila, ideally, we're supposed to use a cup. We're supposed to use a cup. What do you do if you don't have a cup? Bidi avad, I don't have a cup. What do you do? You're staying at a hotel, you come up to the sink in the morning, and there's no cups in the bathroom like you thought there were going to be, and you got to wash your hands in the morning. What do you do? What do? You go up to the sink, you turn on the faucet, and you start going like this, without the cup. Lechatchila, you need a cup. Bidi avad, if there's no cup, just go like that with your hands, it's good enough. After the fact, it's good enough when you wash your hands. Okay. Now, one nuance different. Ashkenazim in the room, raise your hand. Ashkenazi? Sfaradim in the room? Sfaradim? Okay, good. Okay. Ashkenazim, if you wash your hands without a cup, then wash like normal without a cup, go like this under the water and make a bracha, no problems. Sfaradim, don't make a bracha if you don't have a cup. Let's do a big idea. Let's do a big idea. Ready for a big idea? Let's make a general idea when it comes to halacha that'll give you a general understanding of bigger ideas. A bracha from the Torah, from the rabbis, to make a bracha on something, to make a bracha on an apple, to make a bracha on washing our hands. Who came up with the idea of making a bracha? God or the rabbis? Is it a mitzvah min Torah, a deoraita, a Torah commandment, or is it a derabanan, a rabbinic commandment? Making a bracha.
From the rabbis?
From the rabbis. All brachas? But it's correct. Skylar is correct. Almost all brachas are rabbinic. Because what's the idea of a bracha? To say thank you for enjoying the world, to say please before I use the world, or to give ourselves kavanah, to give ourselves intention, to remind ourselves that it's a mitzvah and that God commanded us, and that we get excited about doing it, and it gives us a good intention. So almost all blessings are rabbinic. There's 2, maybe 3 cases that are from the Torah. Who could think, when did the Torah tell us to make a bracha?
Brit Milah?
Brit Milah?
I don't know. It's just a guess.
Good guess, but no. Brit Milah, the bracha of the Brit Milah is the Rabbanan. The halacha is you got to make a snip. The bracha the rabbis came up with afterwards.
Is it Birkat Hamazon?
Excellent. Birkat Hamazon. Birkat Hamazon is the most famous one. That's from the Torah. Well, how do you know Birkat Hamazon is from the Torah?
There's Uberachta.
Beautiful. The pasuk says, we sing it in the Birkat Hamazon. Ve'achalta ve'savata uberachta. Ve'achalta means, God says to us, you're going to eat. Ve'achalta. Ve'savata, you're going to be full. Uberachta. And you're going to bless God. You're going to thank Hashem for the food that you have. That says that in the Torah. So it's true, the rabbis wrote out the exact blessing, how we say it, but God told us, make a blessing. That becomes from the Torah. Very good. Excellent, Nisa. Anybody else can guess? Where else do we have a Torah commandment to make a bracha? Okay, the other 2 are harder. The other 2, one of them is Birkat Kohanim, when the Kohans bless us in the morning. Here on the program right now, we actually have 2 guys in the program that are Kohanim. They're here, they're blessing us in the morning. It's a big, big deal. In Israel, everybody does Birkat Kohanim every morning. In America, in Canada, the Sfaradim do Birkat Kohanim every morning. The Ashkenazim do not. Only on the holidays. In Israel, everybody does Birkat Kohanim. And when you have 2 Kohanim in the room, that's a bracha from the Torah. They're required to bless you. And the third one, it's a little bit of an argument, is the bracha before you learn Torah might also be a Torah commandment. But every other bracha, including Netilat Yadayim, is rabbinic. Because it's rabbinic, we have an interesting question. You guys heard? Who knows? You guys ever heard of the idea of a bracha levatala? Bracha levatala, beracha levatala.
Wasted bracha.
Huh?
Wasted bracha.
A wasted bracha, a bracha that you weren't supposed to make. If somebody ate an apple, he made a borei priya etz, and then a second later, he has the same apple, makes another borei priya etz. That's a bracha levatala. You weren't supposed to make that bracha. Sometimes in halacha, we have what's called a safek bracha. We have a question. Do I make the bracha? Do I not make the bracha? Like, for example, when you have a cup when you're washing your hands in the morning, according to the opinion of the Rashba, you're supposed to remind yourself of the temple. In the temple, you have to have a cup, you have to have a kior, a basin, you have to do it properly. According to that opinion, if you don't have a cup, it might not be good. According to the other 2 opinions, a cup is not part of the story. It's not as important. So now you have a question. If I don't have a cup, is the washing good enough or not good enough? Now, in a case of a real strong safek, Ashkenazim and Sfaradim say, safek brachot leakel. In the case of a doubt of a bracha, I go lenient, which means I don't make the bracha. So, like, for example, if it's a real safek when it comes to washing your hands, So then what happens? You don't make the bracha, but you wash your hands. Because washing your hands, that's the mitzvah. And I'm allowed to wash my hands whenever I want. So I wash my hands, but I don't make a bracha because I'm worried the bracha might be the wrong bracha. What happens if a person makes a bracha he's not supposed to make? How bad is it? How bad is it? You didn't listen and you did it anyway. You made the bracha. How bad is it? According to the Ashkenazim, it's not that bad. It's not right. You're not supposed to just say God. You're not supposed to just like make brachas just to make brachas. There has to be a reason for it. But if you make a mistake, you had good intentions. It's only a rabbinic mistake. According to the Rambam and the Sfaradim do like the Rambam, if a person makes a bracha when he's not supposed to, it could be a biblical mistake of saying God's name in vain. One of the 10 commandments is don't say God's name in vain. The other rabbis say taking God's name in vain means cursing God, means swearing in God's name. It doesn't mean making up bracha by accident. Your intention wasn't bad. But according to the Rambam, that might be included in making a bracha. So based on that, he says, in all cases, be careful. Don't say God's name if you don't have to. That's why when it comes to a cup, if you don't have a cup in the morning, Sfaradim will wash without a bracha because they're scared of what the Rambam said. Ashkenazim will wash with the bracha because they had the other two opinions to rely on. Okay, that was difficult, but it's a big general idea. Yes, Galit.
I always thought that if you said a bracha by accident, it wasn't a big deal because I just said like Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto after it. Like
Okay,
I heard
excellent.
it.
It is such a big deal that you say Baruch Shem Kevod afterwards. You hear, Skylar? It's such a big deal making a bracha that the rabbis even said we can't undo what you just did, but if you just messed with God's name, so what do we say? Baruch Shem Kevod Le'olam Vaed. May your name, your great name, be blessed, God. Meaning, I just made a blessing by mistake and I used your name in vain. Let me now bless you, Baruch Shem Kevod. Let me bless your name again. So what we're trying to do is trying to fix the mistake. So that's why you would say the pasuk if a bracha was said what shouldn't have been said. But very good, Scarlett. Okay, good. Now, we wash our hands, and while our hands are still wet, that's when we're supposed to make the bracha. Don't wait till it dries. How come? Why do we want our hands to still be wet? So Netilat Yadayim is one of the weirdest mitzvahs we have in the Torah. Because most of the time, when do you make a blessing on something? You make a blessing on it before you do it. After you already did it, it'd be too late. Like, for example, on Rosh Hashanah, you're supposed to hear the shofar. If somebody blew the shofar, and you already heard it, and you said, oh, I want to do the mitzvah of hearing the shofar, after you heard it, it's done. You can't make a bracha on blowing anymore. You already heard it. Another example, we just had Sukkot. Sukkot, you take the lulav and etrog, you pick it up. If you pick it up before you make the bracha, you already got the mitzvah. You can't make a bracha anymore. Most mitzvahs, you have an apple. Once you eat the apple, you're done with the apple. You can't make a bracha after the fact. It doesn't work that way. If you took one bite of the apple and you forgot, and there's still more apple left, you could make a bracha because of the rest of the apple. But you can't make a bracha once you ate the apple. It's done. So how come in Netilat Yadayim do we not make the bracha before we wash our hands? Why do we wash our hands and then make a bracha? Ideas? Yes, Skylar.
Is it because we're impure?
Excellent. We mentioned in the past that we can't say God's name. The rabbis wrote Modeh Ani to teach us that you can't say God's name until you wash your hands. So how could we say God's name with Netilat Yadayim before we wash our hands? So what we have to do is we have to wash our hands first and then make the bracha afterwards. But because we still want to be connected to the mitzvah, they say better to not dry your hands. B'diavad, after the fact, if you dried your hands, you can still make the bracha if it's not too far away. But lechatchila, ideally, you want to make the bracha before you dry your hands while they're still wet, so at least the bracha attaches to something a little bit. Okay, let's ask you guys a fun question. For the Ashkenazim in the room, there are 2 more times where you do this weird thing of do the mitzvah before you make the bracha. Anybody know what it is? think for a second. It's mainly by Ashkenazim, some Moroccans and some Iraqis as well, but primarily Ashkenazim do this. And ladies, you probably know you probably have done this before. What other mitzvah do you do the weird thing of making the bracha after doing the mitzvah?
Lighting the candles for
Lighting the
Shabbat.
candles. Excellent. Lighting the candles.
I'm not even Ashkenazi.
Lighting the candles. Okay, good, but excellent, baby. Excellent, though. How do you light candles on Friday night? It depends. If you're Syrian, if you're Persian, you're going to make the bracha al netilat lalik ner shel Shabbat, and then you light the candles. Why? Because that's how you do a mitzvah. You make a bracha and then you light. But if you're Ashkenazi, if you're some Moroccans and some Iraqis, what do? They first light the candles, then they make the bracha. Because they're worried that if you make the bracha first, you might get confused and think that you accepted Shabbat and you lit after accepting Shabbat. We don't accept Shabbat with the bracha. We accept Shabbat with the lighting. But people were making mistakes. So they said, you know what, better that you light first. That way there'll be nobody will make any mistake when it comes to Shabbat. So that's why the Ashkenazi custom is to first light and then make the bracha. But what do you do before you make the bracha? You go like this with your hands, you cover your eyes. Why are you covering your eyes? So you don't get enjoyment from the light, so at least my bracha can go on the light. But again, the Sfaradim that go according to Rav Adi Yosef, the Iraqis, the Persians, and others, they make the bracha first because they say, no. Once you make a bracha, once you light, you can't make a bracha afterwards, and this whole hand thing is not good enough, but I still see the majority of the world does the whole hand thing. One more time, when Ashkenazi women make a bracha, and Sephardic women don't. Or make the bracha after, not before. Sephardic do it before, and Ashkenazi women do it after. Any guesses? This one's harder, because it probably did not happen in your life. When a woman goes to the mikveh. When a woman goes to the mikveh, whether she's converting or whether it's her time of the month and she goes to the mikveh, she dips in. Sephardic halacha is the woman gets into the water, makes the bracha, and then dips. Ashkenazi halacha is to make the bracha after you're already out, and that has to do with halachot of cleanliness and clarity of water and nakedness, and when you make a blessing with God's name. That would be the other area where Sephardim and Ashkenazim differ. But everybody by Netilat Yadayim makes the bracha after washing, because you can't say God's name until you've washed your hands for the first time in the morning. Questions on that? Questions? Make sense? Good. You with me? Okay. After you wash your hands, you guys show me with your hands. How do you hold up your hands when you make the bracha? How do you do it? You wash your hands 3 times on each. If you're one of the Gaon and Vilna students, some Ashkenazim do 4 on each hand, but most of us do 3 on each hand. You finish washing your hands. Now what do? They're still wet. You hold it up like this in front of your face, like you're getting a gift from God, and you make the bracha of al netilat yadayim. Okay, beautiful. And then afterwards, you could dry your hands. Now let's go. Okay, cool idea, people. Cool idea. Spiritual idea. Based on the ruach ra'ah, the evil spirit approach, you're not supposed to touch any of the holes in your body, your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your ears, any hole you have in your body, you're not supposed to touch before you wash your hands. Actually, this applies to food as well. You're not supposed to touch food. You're not supposed to touch holy books, a Siddur, Tehillim, Torah books. You're not supposed to touch that before you wash your hands in the morning. Now, when it comes to an apple, if somebody would touch an apple before they wash their hands, you're supposed to wash off the apple 3 times to get rid of the impure spirit. If you touch bread, you touch a book, b'diavad, you don't have to wash it because you're going to ruin the book, you're going to ruin the bread. But if it's like an apple and you could wash it off, you should. That's not you don't want to touch things before. But it says don't touch your eyes, your nose, your mouth. It could be dangerous. So some people learn it's physically dangerous. Bacteria, like corona kind of laws. Don't touch the holes in your body. The Kaf HaChaim gives a beautiful, though, spiritual understanding. Says the Kaf HaChaim, how do we relate to the world? A person relates to the world with his 5 senses. How do we learn? How do we grow? We learn by reading things, by listening to things, by touching things. We inhale, we bring in this olam hazeh, we bring in the knowledge of this world, and through our senses, we learn. Says the Kaf HaChaim, if you don't purify your senses in the morning, if you don't make yourself what he calls a kli, a vessel, to grow, then you're going to bring impurity, and it's not going to work. He says if you touch your eyes and your ears before you wash your hands, what you're doing is you're bringing impurity to your ears. So have you ever happened to you that like there's this particular rabbi or rebbitzin or this person, the typical class you love to listen to because you love the Torah and you grow so much from it. But then one day the rabbi's talking and like all that you hear is like wah 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 wah, and you like hear nothing is going through. Or maybe you've gone to the kotel and one person goes to the kotel, touches the kotel with his hands, and is like crying and having a very spiritual experience. But the other person goes to the kotel, nothing, touching a wall, doesn't feel anything at the kotel. So what's going on over here? Says the Kaf HaChaim. Look back at your day. Did you purify yourself? Did you wash your hands? Did you touch your ears before you started learning Torah? Did you wash your hands before you touched that kotel? Did you purify yourself? Because it could be if you didn't purify yourself, you actually brought tumah to those places, and for the rest of the day, those senses won't be as perceptive to the spiritual chidushim, the spiritual new ideas you could have learned. Cool idea? Cool idea. Okay. Next. Next halacha, ladies in the room in particular, maybe the guys too. Last year we had a guy that had one of these. Rings. Who here wears rings? Anybody wear rings? No ring people?
Yeah.
You're a ring person? Do you always wear your rings?
No.
No, only sometimes. Okay. There's a halacha that before you wash your hands, you're supposed to remove your rings. If you always wear your rings, you never take them off, you're always wearing that ring, then there are those that are lenient, and they say that for the morning washing, you could leave the rings on, just move them back and forth, let the water get underneath. For bread, people are a lot more strict, and they say that for bread, you should take off the rings. But for the mornings, if you're a person that doesn't normally wear rings, you put it on occasionally, you put it on to match your outfit, something like that, then at that point, you're supposed to take it off even in the morning, because you're not like a regular ring wearer. It's interesting. We're talking in the class this morning about Orthodox men, that Jewish men in general tend to not wear wedding bands as much or as often, or after their first or second year of like marriage, like they're not wearing it as much. And some people want to say, why is that? They're thinking because you have to keep taking it off when you wash your hands. It gets too annoying and they stop doing it. And even in the Orthodox world, when it comes to Jewish women, they'll wear their wedding rings on Friday night, their engagement rings, but the rest of the week, not as much, none of that. Partially because we have the whole washing of the hands thing. We're really supposed to have our whole hands get immersed basically in water. Okay. Women are obligated just like men to wash their hands. Children, kids. Okay, big question about education. When are you obligated to teach your kids mitzvahs? Anybody know? At what age are you obligated to teach your kids how to make blessings, how to I don't know, to keep kosher?
Isn't it at 3?
3, good. Not exactly, but close. 3
Or,
becomes the beginning
Isn't it
point.
like the upshurin? Isn't that like when
Yeah.
they become chayav?
No, you only become chayav when you're bar mitzvah. But when do we become obligated in chinuch, in educating our kids? Now, educating our kids, it's an argument. Who's obligated to educate the kid? The parent or the kid? Can a kid be obligated? Many opinions say that the parents are obligated, not the kids. Some say that the kids are obligated, which means but the parents are the ones that do it. So if God forbid somebody's an orphan, he would still have to teach himself. Like when he's 10 years old, he can still teach himself how to do things. But at what age does it start? So 3 becomes the beginning, when a kid starts to understand some basic things. But the truth is, it all depends on the particular law and what the kid's comprehension is. When the kid starts to understand things, and he can start to understand that rule, you start to explain it. So at 3 years old, the average kid can't really understand the details of Shabbat laws. But they can begin to understand, don't touch the light switch. We'll even call it muktzeh, even though it's not muktzeh. We'll call it muktzeh, because that way the kid can start to learn. There's things you do, things you don't do. You teach on a basic level, but you have to teach the kid all the nuances about Shabbat. If a little kid starts playing with a car and that makes noise after he starts playing with it, you have to take it away from him on Shabbat. The actual halachas you don't, because the kid doesn't know better. When he's 6, 7, at that point already he's a little bit older. Then at that point you have to grow with him and make him understand better, or make her understand better the rules that they have. So the way it works with halacha is when the kid understands that rule, that's when you teach it to him. What's the exception to that rule? We actually have two big exceptions. One of them is washing hands. Washing hands in the morning, we will wash our baby's hands even though they don't understand what we're doing. Why? Because washing hands is about purity. We want our kids to be pure. So even though they don't understand that they're being pure, we might not have an obligation to educate them about being pure, but we want them to be pure. So even little kids who don't understand, we're still going to wash their hands. The other halacha where we're strict, even at a young age, is keeping kosher. Even though a 2-year-old doesn't understand anything what kosher is all about, we still only want to give our kids kosher food, because we also say that a person who eats non-kosher is ingesting impure food, and we want them to stay kosher. Okay. Questions on any of that stuff that we did until now? Okay, now I want to go with something a little bit harder. Okay, something a little bit tiny bit harder. When and where do you wash your hands in the morning? When and where? How close to getting up? Which sink do you go? When and where? Andrew, you got an answer for me? When and where do you wash your hands in the morning? No? Aliana, you got an answer for me? When and where do you wash your hands? Ben, got an answer? You wake up in the morning. How soon, how far, where do you wash your hands?
I think you're supposed to do it like right when you wake up. Like some people have a thing, like a bucket by their bed, so they could do it.
Okay, cool. Excellent. The idea is that you're supposed to wash your hands as soon as you wake up and as close to your bed as when you wake up. Because as a rule, when it comes to like the evil spirit, a person's not supposed to walk 4 steps, 4 of these amot, 4 of these, a little bit more than 4 steps, more like 6 steps. But 4 of these guys, you're not supposed to walk that in the morning before you wash your hands because of the spiritual impurity. So based on that, some people will put the cup with the water right next to their bed. Actually, what they'll do is they'll put a big bowl, they'll take a cup, fill it with water, cover it, and then the second they wake up, it's right next to their bed, they'll wash their hands right away. Now, most people don't do that. Most people get up and they walk to the sink. And most people, their sink is more than 4 steps, more than 6 steps away. How do they do that? So they argue, which is another big opinion, is that as long as you're under the same rooftop, then the 4 steps doesn't count. It's only when you walk outside your house does the 4 steps count, which means if you're hiking outside, if you're sleeping in the Bedouin tents here in Israel, if you're doing that, then when you wake up in the morning, you really should have the water right next to you covered, and then use that uncovered in the morning and use it. There's another issue though when you wake up. There's another big issue, which makes the halacha very, very complicated. The average person when they wake up in the morning has to go to the bathroom. And if you have to go to the bathroom, you're not allowed to say God's name if your body's not pure. It's a very important halacha all day long. Before you make a bracha, if you really have to go to the bathroom, you're not supposed to say God's name. Even if you don't really have to go, but you have to go a little bit, it's better to go to the bathroom first and then say God's name. If you're in a situation where there's no bathroom next to you and all that, it's more complicated. If you could hold it for 72 minutes, then you're allowed to make a bracha on something else. If you can't hold it, you're not allowed to make a bracha. If you can't hold it for 72 minutes, you are not allowed to make a blessing, even after the fact. It's no good. You have to go to the bathroom first. Now, there is a little bit of a debate. We're talking about number 1 and number 2, or only number 2. Ravadi is a little bit lenient when it comes to number 1, but the average posek says that even number 1, when a person wakes up in the morning, they really have to go to the bathroom. So what do? I can't make an Yadayim and say God's name if I have to go to the bathroom. But also, I can't touch parts of my body. Like, what do I do? It's like here, it's a really big halacha dilemma, which I said last week. This week's class is going to be the most difficult class, because how do you balance these two ideas? On the one hand, you have to go to you're not allowed to make a bracha until you go to the bathroom. On the other hand, you're supposed to wash your hands as soon as possible. So what do you do? So the rabbis give actually 3 approaches. 2 of them are mainstream. One of them most people don't do nowadays. But there's 3 main approaches in the rabbis. We have the mainstream approach, the Kabbalistic approach, and what people in Chicago do. What should we start with? Who wants to start with the show of hands Kabbalistic approach? No vote, one vote. Who wants to start with the mainstream approach? Who wants to start with the Chicago approach? Okay, fine, Chicago approach. Okay, I call it the Chicago approach because I've seen it in halacha books, and I only had 1 year a group that came from Chicago. I think they were from Ida Crown. A group came from Chicago who's like, oh yeah, we do it this way. We do it this way. Okay, so the Chicago approach, it's not mainstream, but it is brought down. The first opinion we said of why we wash our hands in the morning is to be pure, to pray. So what do they say? They say you're supposed to make the Yadayim as close to prayer as possible. So what they do is they wash in their house without a bracha. They can wash right away, they can wash the sink, but they wash early on, and they don't make the bracha until they get to shul, and they say it in the Beit Knesset along with all the morning brachas. So most places don't do that. Most places on Netilat Yadayim, you say at home. And actually, because you're supposed to make it next to prayer, it's even good to say the morning brachas at home as well. Now, some schools and some shuls will do all the morning brachas, and apparently in Chicago, they also did Netilat Yadayim in the school as well. So either they did it because they held to this opinion that they wanted to make the bracha next to prayer, or because they wanted to teach the kids, because the kids probably wouldn't have done it at home, because they probably wouldn't have washed their hands at home. And if you do it in school, it's a better way to teach kids. Okay, that's the Chicago approach. You don't have to know the Chicago approach because most people don't do it. We have two more approaches, the mainstream approach and the Kabbalistic approach. Let's go with the mainstream approach. The mainstream approach says, you know what? I'm not worried about the 4 steps because I'm under one roof. I'm going to go to the bathroom right away. I'm going to be careful not to touch any parts of my body. Go to the bathroom and then wash my hands and then walk out of the bathroom and make the bracha. That's probably the mainstream approach, what most people do today. You wake up, go to the bathroom, wash your hands, just be careful not to touch parts of your body. And then if possible, do a bit of prayer, say some morning brachot. Then there's what Ben mentioned, the Kabbalistic approach. You'll find this by the Chabadnikim, the Hasidim, some Sephardim do this as well. We find it in the more ultra-Orthodox world, where they're going to put a bowl next to their bed, and they're going to put the cup of water, fill it up before they go to bed at night, and then cover it. They even sell now cups today with covers. Cover it and put it next to your bed. Then when you wake up in the morning, what do? You don't want to walk 4 steps. So you wash your hands right next to your bed, but you got to go to the bathroom. So you wash your hands, but you don't make a bracha. Then you go to the bathroom, wash your hands again, and now when you come out of the bathroom, you make the bracha after the second wash. And that will be the Kabbalistic, less mainstream, but also pretty popular approach. Questions? Questions? Okay, fine. You know what, people? I think we're good for this week. Thank you, everybody. Shabbat shalom.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
Yeah.